Hi, my name is Mohammed Alrmizan. I am a doctoral researcher in the journalism department at the City University of London. In this pre-workshop presentation, I will present my research very briefly. In this presentation, I will be talking about the introduction, historiography of Kemalism, where to examine Kemalism and Ataturk legacy, my research methodology and data, result and discussion, and then the conclusion. In my introduction of this research, I would like to think of Kemalism and Ataturk's legacy as both parts of the Turkish and Ottoman history, because I do think that Kemalism and his ideas and her personality did develop back in the last part of the Ottoman Empire before founding the Republic of Turkey. One of the important ideas also is to think of Kemalism and the legacy of Ataturk, although they did seem have an international significance. Most of the study of it or the perspective that began to look into it for years has done it from and through a very Turkish context. Going from the theme of this workshop, which focus on the transnationalism of Kemalism. In my research, I would like to study Kemalism and the legacy of Ataturk and how they are being represented, discussed, and attributed in the Arab and Muslim nations. In my specific research, I'm drawing an example in Saudi Arabia, and I'm taking content from one of its leading newspaper websites to make my analysis. The historiography is important because without understanding the historiography of Kemalism, it will be, and the legacy of Ataturk, it will be a little bit difficult to understand how both are being represented, narratives made about them, and attributed in many parts other than Turkey. Scholarship of Kemalism did come from Western perspective, which most of them represent this kind of Orientalist point of view, Turkish perspective, which represent local perception of its history. Only few global perspective did come out about Kemalism, and I can recall one of the books that I have read about Kemalism and the history of the Soviet Union. Where to examine Kemalism and Ataturk legacy, I have asked myself this question, and I found the best ways. One of the best ways is to look into the media platforms and how they narrated, attributed, and refer to Kemalism and the legacy of Ataturk. So, and my choice was on a Riyadh newspaper. It's one of the main leading newspaper in Riyadh and in Saudi Arabia. It's one of the national and very classic newspaper that was publishing since the 1960s. In my research and methodology section, my research paper elaborated a lot more than what I could provide in this slide. But mainly I have included in my research 74 articles, and I only analyze the content that included name of authors, which is mainly convey kind of views of authors, because I'm interested in the views that included some degrees of intellectuality about Kemalism in one hand and the legacy of Ataturk. The result and discussion, the preliminary findings indicated 74 articles, which I included in my analysis. By looking through these articles, I came about 3 categories. One of them is contemporary Turkish politics, which included other subcategories, and then cultures and history. The interesting ideas that I came to find is, although the subject of Kemalism and legacy of Ataturk may seem historical, most of the articles I have analyzed refer to Ataturk on one hand and or Kemalism on the other hand in reference to contemporary Turkish politics. And the other thing is that titles, which could make good indication about the content for most of times, most of the articles included titles with reference to Turkey and Erdogan and East and Arabs, more than Ataturk and Kemalism. Actually, Ataturk as a title included only in 3 articles, and Kemalism included in 1 article. In my research paper, I also included subsections before the conclusion on the analysis that I made based on the content of the articles and based on the quotes. In my analysis, I found it interesting that most articles which refer to Kemalism or the legacy of Ataturk, they refer to Erdogan as an opposite side of Ataturk or as an opposite side of the projects laid out by Ataturk. For example, here's a quote from one of the articles. Also, what does it mean for Erdogan, who considers himself Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, to turn into the 21st century? Another one says Ataturk Erdogan today is a mirror image of Ataturk. So the last quote is criticizing Erdogan as he is like Ataturk. Another aspect of my analysis, according to the content of these articles, which include the Turkish foreign policy and the Arabs, it says most of the leading active Arab countries are open up to Turkey after getting rid of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk's state, and bet was that Recep Tayyip Erdogan would restore this fundamental and pivotal state. This briefly article using Erdogan as the only one who began restoring relationships with the Arabs, in which was cut off by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk's and his ideas, according to this article. In this part of my analysis, I also look how the articles under Islam, identity, and secularism refer to Ataturk. One of them that I'm including here is saying Erdogan's candidacy for the presidential election support the Islamic trend. The Islamization of Turkish society frustrates supporters of secularization. This quote from an article provides several arguments in which Erdogan and his party victory, the AKP, were against the belief of the proponent of secularism. Part of my analysis also included several articles under the history category, and one of them was titled as such, Azan in Turkey, a story intertwined with season. God is great, stands firm in the face of secularism, subdues government, and elevates other. It seems that so many articles, whether under history or culture or contemporary Turkish politics, show a negative outlook toward secularism in one hand and the role of Ataturk in the history making of Turkey. In this part of my analysis, in which I include articles under the category of culture, one admire and the other one condemn when they make references to Ataturk and Kemalism. I'm reading from one quote here, which was written about the culture of traveling and in world capitals. So it says, before Kemal Ataturk, the founder of modern republic, decided to move the capital to a submerged town in Anatolia called Ankara to escape the Islamic weight of Istanbul. So this is clearly a negative way in which Ataturk represented as an escapist from the Islamic capital, which was then in Istanbul. The other one shows a bit positive outlook, which says, this was the only achieved through the great renaissance of Kemal Ataturk, made to put an end to the continuation of the Ottoman era in line with the emergence of the concept of the nation state. So this is another way in which one condemns and the other one admires. In the concluding of my research, I found that Kemalism and legacy of Ataturk were attributed pretty much to contemporary Turkish politics rather than the history or culture. The other is that one of the founding principles was mentioned more than once, is the concept of secularism. Furthermore, it seems that there is a dualistic using of terms. So whenever Ataturk is mentioned, usually followed or in opposite to Erdogan. The other is that whenever secularism is mentioned, articles mention Islam. In the end, I think that Kemalism and Ataturk legacy were not discussed in details with scientific sources or with long articles, but they were only used as argumentative tools in making an idea about subject related to Turkey. That's the end of this brief presentation. Thank you for listening.